selected streaming software to go live. I believe we are now live. I'm pretty sure about that. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly Spinner Rack. This is usually about a 2-hour live stream show where we can all talk comics and nerdy stuff like that. I always start off with reviewing the stuff that I personally read in the past week. And then after that, we will move on to, I'll be drawing and we'll talk about comic book news of the week. There was a lot. And I'm not just talking something like the Spider-Man movie. By the way, please no spoilers in the discussion. I saw it, but I'm not going to talk really about it or any spoilers. Let's let people discover it on their own. If you've already seen it, awesome. Let's not spoil anything for anyone. But there's a lot of comic book news this week. There's a lot to talk about in terms of reviews, and I'd love to hear from all of you. We're coming up on basically the end of the year, so I've got a few thoughts on comics of 2021, and then we've got, the holidays basically approaching in terms of Christmas and stuff. So maybe we can talk a little bit about unique gifts we're getting for our loved ones that are nerds like us. No, I'm not really going to talk, Clay, about No Way Home other than I enjoyed it, okay? I'm just going to sort of keep it like that. I don't really want to talk about any aspect of it because it's not even a week that it's been out. I just don't think it's a good idea to talk about it. We've got so many other things to do, so we're going to, move past that. Yeah, there's just too many people that probably still haven't seen it. But I'll talk about, the box office when I talk about comic book news. Let's just get right into it because, look, folks, I bought a cuckoo number of comics this week. These are the comics that I bought just this week. I haven't even, to be honest, finished reading everything. Some of it I've only partially read. Starting off with, I picked up Chainsaw Man. I've heard from a lot of people that this is a pretty entertaining manga. I'm only a chapter in. It's pretty funny. The artwork is great. Chainsaw Man, you could almost say that it's a play on an idea like Devilman. This guy sort of is possessed with the powers of a devil, which you could probably interpret as a demon, and he hunts down evil devils because he's in debt. Technically, he's in debt from his deadbeat late father. He starts off with this little devil, which is his pet dog. And, the guy's name is Denji, and he's, just to show how in debt he is, he's sold an eye, he's sold a kidney. I mean, the guy has nothing to his name. He lives in a tiny shack. He eats a cigarette for, 1,000 yen, or no, 100 yen. That's, basically $1. Anyway, dang delay. Is there a delay? There's probably a delay between what people are typing and then me noticing it. But anyway, the artwork is cool. Let me just look at how detailed some of the action and carnage scenes are. It's funny and it's action packed. I think I'm gonna like it. Like I say, only barely into it, but I think I'll probably keep reading it. I liked it. Moving forward, what else? This is potentially one of my top 10 books of the year. I think I'm still finessing my personal top 10 of the year. It's called Cyclopedia Exotica. It's by a guy named Aminder Dhaliwal. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing this creator's name. And it's basically about a world where there are both Cyclops and Two Eyes. Okay? So, and they're not even necessarily they're a minority, but there's a lot of them, okay? And it's funny, but it also speaks to something deep. It follows about 10 different people in this world, and their lives intersect and stuff. And the comic strips are mostly 1 to 2 pages before it switches to another character. A lot of really funny stuff, but it's also talking about how they fit into society and how they're treated by others and how they treat each other. And we're talking about relationships. We're talking about artwork. We're talking about having children, neuroses about themselves. All I can say is it's both funny and surprisingly deep. I read this as on the surface, you're just getting funny, interesting stories, all right? It's like a drama comedy. But right beneath that, excuse me, I'm stuttering, there is there's subtext. I think it's basically sort of what it's like for different people to live in the Western world as Asians. It could be any minority, honestly. I'm just saying Asian maybe because of the author. So perhaps I'm projecting some biases on this. All I can say is it's really good. It's really charming. It's a big book, but like in a single hour, I read more than 2/3 of it because I just blasted through it. I really, really like it. So that gets a recommend for whatever it's worth. This definitely gets a recommend. Folks, let me just briefly say that I love Guy Delisle. One of my favorite genres in comics is autobiographies. I really like autobiographies because to take the time to commit that story to a comic book, that's a process. It takes longer, I would say, than just typing it up because you're also illustrating it. And that's what Guy Delisle does. And he lives an interesting life. He's a Canadian who, his wife is a doctor who does Doctors Without Borders, and he supervises an animation studio from Canada. His first book, oh my God, it was incredible. He lived in North Korea for a period of time, supervising an animation studio over there. Yeah, North Korea actually does do a bit of animation work for the rest of the world. And he had to live there. And getting to see a Westerner's perspective, you're not allowed to take videos or photos or anything, but he's got his memories, and he wrote it as a comic book. Not joking it up, just telling it like it was. Fascinating. And then because his wife does Doctors Without Borders, he's lived in some pretty hostile areas, like parts of Israel and Burma. Those were each books. This one is way more innocent, but much more interesting to people that are into comics. It talks about his first summer job as a teenager, where he worked at a printing press, a huge printing press. And you get to understand just how tough that work is. This work is so physically intense, but it is also fascinating to see all the steps that go into printing. Because this is what it takes to get any of our books or comic books, magazines, and we don't always think about it. I've encountered it because in my work I've done marketing, so I've literally gone to printing presses and talked to them. I usually have to format stuff for different printers, but it's interesting seeing the perspective of what it was like to do this work. It's tough work, and it's interesting, especially if you're into comics. So while this wouldn't necessarily be the first Guy Delisle book I'd recommend, by the way, he both writes and illustrates his stories, I definitely do recommend it. Personally, I think the most fascinating one of all of his books has to be Pyongyang, where he lived in North Korea. That is just, wow, mind-blowing how different it is, and getting to see how they live there. Hey, we've got a bunch of people here, including professional artist Jim Mahfood, who says, Chainsaw Man rules. Well, I'm glad I'm discussing it. And James Stewart asks, am I going to do a top 10 of the year video? That is my plan for next week. I believe tonight I should be able to finish this week's episode, which I know is at this point over a day late. It's a little longer than usual and involved a lot more research. So I'm still wrapping up the editing. I'm very close to wrapping up the editing. So as soon as I finish this live stream, I'm going right back to my Kotatsu work desk and finishing a new Comic Tropes for everyone, just so you know. Anyway, I do recommend that book. Now we're going to go through just the weekly comics. Not tons that I picked up there. I did get the latest issue of Berserker 6, mostly out of a fascination to see where this ultimately ends up, since Keanu Reeves is working on it. It's being developed into a movie or a TV show, I'm not sure which, and it clearly is designed to star him. But any interviews he's given, he's always credited everybody, like, writer Matt Kindt, artist Ron Garney, Bill Crabtree. He's even credited the letterers, like Clem Robbins, which I think is pretty awesome. Like, that he's going out of his way to just... He's not being like, oh yeah, I made a comic book. He's like, no, I had a piece of this action. Anyway, the character is a guy who's been around for hundreds of thousands of years, basically can't seem to die, kind of Wolverine. Biggest difference, he remembers his whole history, but he doesn't understand why he can't die. So in the modern day, he's working for the American government as like a soldier on black ops type missions, wet work stuff, while their scientists try to explain his origins. It's not necessarily the deepest thing in the world. I will say that it's full of action generally, so it's fun. This is fairly light reading. I wouldn't say it's the deepest thing. It's okay. It's pretty good. Yeah, I'm glad you caught the live stream too, Jay Muse. Thank you for coming in. Let's see, what else do we have? This is the first one I have that I really can't recommend. This is probably gonna... I don't think I'm gonna continue getting this book because it's just not for me, folks. I wanted to give it a second chance since I didn't really like the first issue, but I do generally like Donny Cates's writing, and I love Ryan Ottley's work. I think Ryan's a great guy. So this comic definitely looks great. You can't take that away. But the basic premise is that Bruce Banner, the scientist, has created technology so that he is in control of the Hulk, and he sort of mentally pilots Hulk like a spaceship, and he's got the Hulk persona trapped, fueling it by like sending him like virtual threats that are constantly escalating, and that just makes Hulk stronger and stronger. To what extent, I really couldn't say. The idea of piloting Hulk as a machine doesn't interest me very much. I'm like, why not tell a story with robots or synthetics or something like that? I don't know. Maybe it'll go somewhere interesting. I also think it's almost a little too gory for a mainstream superhero book, which isn't something I mind if it's like designed to be, adult readers. But, Hulk punching out Wolverine's eye is surprisingly gory for a book like this. It's not that it looks bad. It doesn't even offend me. I'm just like, I don't know. Tonally, it just doesn't work for me. So, I gave it a shot. I'm not too interested in pursuing this one any further. If it's your speed, awesome. I take nothing away from you. I really, really wanted to like this more than I did, but I think I'm done with that. Moving forward, Demon Days. That's a really fun, cool comic book that they have, because I love it when Marvel or DC gives an artist their keys to the kingdom. Like, do whatever you want. And that's basically what Peach Momoko is doing, teaming up with Zack Davisson as co-writer. This is taking X-Men characters and reimagining them in a sort of feudal Japan era. The artwork is gorgeous. Like, you can't deny that looks really pretty. Sometimes it's sketchy, and sometimes it has like sort of a detailed watercolor type of idea. This introduces Storm and Thor, although their relationship is a lot more like Storm used to have with Colossus in the classic Chris Claremont written X-Men days. I appreciate that. I don't know. It's really cool. The bad guys in this are Oni and gods. So there's all sorts of interesting monsters from Japanese literature and myth reinterpreted into an X-Men setting. It's pretty cool. It's just fun. That's something different. This is something you haven't really seen before. That's what I'll say. So, obviously we're seeing a little bit of something like Ogun, who was a enemy in old Wolverine comics, coming through here. Anyway, it's really cool. This one I haven't read all the way yet, so I can't even give a detailed review, but I get on Adventureman primarily for the art. I've always liked Terry Dodson's art. If Adam Hughes isn't going to draw a monthly comic, Terry Dodson is definitely the next best thing. And he and his wife Rachel, definitely produced some great artwork. Adventureman is essentially pulp sci-fi action combined with all sorts of stuff, like, in this specific case, westerns. And that's cool. I'm mostly getting it for the art, to be honest. The writing is by Matt Fraction, so the dialogue is good. The story isn't, like, anything that blows me out of the water, but the dialogue's solid. And one cool thing about this, since it's, something published by Image, it's a creator-owned book, Terry Dodson literally uses the back to talk through the steps of how he creates his art, both writing and photographic examples. That's really interesting if you're into the behind the scenes of making comics. So this issue anyway, number 7, like, I'd almost recommend it just for those last 4 or 5 pages. It's pretty interesting. Yeah. 2 more monthly comics that I read. If you've watched any of my shows for a while, one of my personal favorite genres in comics is, well, I said earlier, it's autobiography. But another one that's like probably even just above that is crime. I like crime books. Growing up, Daredevil and Spider-Man were kind of my favorite. And I like Punisher too, because I like crime stuff. Deathstroke at DC, it was cool. This is Chip Zdarsky writing, Jacob Phillips on art. Boy, do they have something that's very similar in a lot of ways to what Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips do on Criminal. But they've got a very original character here. Newburn used to be a cop. Now he works for all the organized crime families, investigating who did something that wasn't authorized or something. He's impartial, but he believes that it's like a way to sort of keep it in check from killing innocent people. It's a mystery book. Jacob Phillips just sort of coming out of nowhere, just rock solid artwork. I love it. I think that this is great. If you like crime books, get it. That's all I can say. I'll keep it quick. Last monthly book I got this week, Orcs in Space. Justin Roiland from Rick and Morty helped put this together. Written by his friend Abed Gheith, his brother Rashad, other comic book writer Mike Tanner, helped sort of guiding them for structure and dialogue and stuff. And it's what it says. These are like primitive orc guys from Dungeons and Dragons type world, and they were accidentally abducted into a Star Trek sci-fi world where they cause chaos. So imagine something like the Three Stooges put into a Star Trek episode, and you're 80% of the way there to figuring out what this is. To me, that's very funny. I won't go into full details on the rest of this stuff because these are all back issues. I'll just show you like real quick what I found at a good rate. Fantastic Four 250. This was John Byrne, if not in his prime, certainly close to it, and just having fun doing all sorts of stuff that he wanted to do in Fantastic Four. I think he was passionate about the team. I think he made them look good. They were likable. They were competent. In this, they basically fight everybody and come out ahead. That's fun. Classic issue of Avengers, art by George Perez. Nothing wrong with that. Hawkeye comes back to the team after he had been gone for a long time. Hawkeye was in my mind because I really am enjoying that Marvel show on Disney+. Hawkeye has been surprisingly deep in MCU like lore and cameos and stuff like that. Hooded Cobra Commander's here. Hey Brian, he says, I like crime. Chris Pierce comic tropes. Fair. That's an actual quote. I love Mike Zack artwork, especially in the 80s. I got this Captain America. I might even have a copy of this. I know I at least used to own a copy of this, but this was at a good price, and I've always loved this cover. Wolverine's claws sparking off of Captain America's shield. We sort of got a little bit of this scene in Captain America Civil War in the movie with Black Panther, scraping his his vibranium claws across the shield. We've got a cat making a cameo in the background. My sister's here. Hey, Jean, loving Hawkeye. Isn't it good? I can't wait to see it all wrap up, but Yeah, it's been a blast. They've brought in, you know, it started looking at like it was a pretty loyal adaptation of the series that I just reviewed, the 22 issue series with art by David Aja and what is it, Matt Fraction, right, as writer? But it's kind of gotten a little deeper than that. They've upped the stakes from what the comic book was by moving in some interesting villains. It's good. I got a 5-pack of Christmas comics that was a mystery bag. The Superstar Holiday Special. What's cool about this one is it's got like characters you wouldn't necessarily expect to get a Christmas special out of, like Sergeant Rock, Cain and Abel from House of Secrets, House of Mystery, and Jonah Hex. Hey, cat. Oh, jeez. The cat has decided to jump behind the computer, so I guess you can do that if you want to, buddy. Almost done. Adele Comics, Alvin and the Chipmunks. And if you've never listened to it, you must listen to Patton Oswalt's stand-up bit on listening to Alvin and the Chipmunks when he was a kid, playing the record player at a slower RPM. I don't want to spoil the joke, but it's funny. An issue of Laugh, which was like an Archie book. Classic Archie art by Dan DiCarlo. Cool. Haven't read this before. This is like just after I'd sort of stopped reading X-Men regularly, but some sort of X-Men Christmas issue. It's really thick too, so maybe that's fun. And I did have this one as a kid from 1993, Marvel's Holiday Special. Yeah, just a cool cover by Art Adams. Anyway, lots of good stuff. Ah, look at all this great chat that I've got to catch up on. Anyway, thank you all for being here. It means a lot to me. So, I have noodled out a little bit of a Spider-Man, or Spider-Men, or Spider-Mans. Spider-Men? Spider-Mans? Spiders-Man? I don't know. Pin-up type thing. Miles and Peter. Still need to like sort of put in a lot of the webs and stuff, but nothing fancy. Just thought, hey, there was a huge Spider-Man movie this week. Maybe I should take a crack at drawing this Spider-Man fellow. Not really based on any particular thing. Yeah, I won't talk about the movie because some of you may not have seen it, and I definitely don't want to spoil it. Even if you're live in chat and everyone said they saw it, people could be watching this week, once it's up as a video, and I just don't want to spoil it for anybody. That brings me no pleasure. So, but I liked it, and it made me think that I felt like drawing Spider-Man, so that's what I'm doing. And I hope you liked it. The box office on it was incredible. Literally the all-time second highest opening of all time in the pandemic. The highest being Avengers Endgame. In a single day, it made like $260 million. So, if you don't think we're getting more, you're crazy. They're definitely, like, with money like that, they can afford to pay, Tom Holland or whatever they need to do. They're going to make more. And I'm sure we'll get Miles at some point, but right now, no. I think we can expect at least one more Spider-Man movie, at least one more with money like that. That's just bonkers box office, especially in the pandemic. And I will say that, like, I do worry a little. Could this box office mean that we're going to have some super spreader events? That would be a bummer. The movie theater I go to, in my county specifically, you have to show your vaccination card just to get into the theater. So generally I feel pretty safe going to the movies right now. But I don't know. Who knows? the last thing I'd ever want to do is get sick again. Like, that was just the worst time of my life. Sincerely, like, getting sick like that, I sincerely thought that I was going to die, and it terrifies me to think back to those days in the hospital. Just the worst. The absolute worst. So I hope nobody gets sick. We'll see. Spiders, man. They thinking of doing another trilogy. I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. Bring in Steel Spider. Our movie theater was stuffed. Ours was too. It exploded. But there's other news in comics. Let me think. Oh, I know one big one. Marvel is redoing the Punisher's logo. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's because the Punisher's logo has been co-opted by so many different groups that they probably don't feel like they have a lot of control over it. So Jason Aaron has a 13-issue series coming up. And they've given him this sort of demonic skull emblem. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, they're Marvel's planning on doing something or other big with Spidey-Man. I'm in Texas and saw the film today. Hope I don't regret it. About half were masked. Oh my God, where I was, everybody was masked. Even though we had to show our vaccination card to get in, we all had to wear masks too. How am I? I'm great, Daniel. Thank you so much for asking. That's very, very kind of you. No, I'm doing very, very well. Thank you. You know what? Even though I'm having fun doodling this stuff in pencil, I can probably just do it in ink. And then you guys will be able to see stuff better, so. Let's see. I'll get a little technical pen for the webs. All those webs, that's why I don't like to draw Spidey. I kind of like it. I like the challenge of making the webs line up with the anatomy. I'm not going to say that I do it well, but I kind of like the challenge. But to each their own. Changes like that never last. They'll go back to the old logo soon. Maybe. They should just start heavy litigation against groups using the logo illegally. They should probably do that too, honestly, if they want to protect their intellectual property. But anyway, I'm glad that isn't my concern. That's somebody else's job. The Punisher changed his symbol and uniform because he's leading the hand. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not super deep into the continuity these days, so that stuff I'm ignorant on. I don't know nothing about it. I feel like there was other news that I wanted to talk about, but it'll come back to me. Is everybody ready for the holidays? Food, gifts, all that stuff done? I'm not quite done, to be honest. I know we're getting like really close to Christmas Day now, less than a week, but I'm not quite 100% done. But I know my sister's in the chat room, so don't worry, Gene. I took care of you. You're not the hardest person to shop for. It's always parents. They never want to tell you what they want. Or they can afford to get whatever they want without asking for it, so. Let's see. I'm getting my siblings gifts after Christmas. You didn't... Oh, that's right. I need to give you some ideas for Chrissy, huh? Oops. I will shoot you a text as soon as I'm done drawing. How about that? Wouldn't that make me a not the worst brother in the world? That's what I aim for. Just not being the worst. What does everybody want for Christmas? What do you want? What do you like? This would make my year complete If only I could get this thing. Then, and only then, will I be happy with life. Oh, I can't wait to give you guys the latest episode. I'm sorry that it's taking longer than usual. Sometimes that's just life. I knew I had a big topic. I've been working on it like every day that I have off, and then like actually I work more than that. Like, just to be clear, you guys know that I work part-time, but that's still like 4 days a week. And I bring my Microsoft Surface with me to work so that on my lunch breaks, I always am working on whatever the next episode is. I always work on it during my lunch. And then as soon as I get home from work, I sit down and work on it some more. So I don't give myself any days off. You know, it's really important to me to produce content. We'll get there. Hi, Hooded Cobra. I love your G.I. Joe's reviews. Really takes me back to my childhood. He does do a good job, doesn't he? Great presentation. Really solid opinions. Yeah. If you like G.I. Joe, Hooded Cobra Commander is the channel to get your Joe fix. And he's added something. He used to do just, G.I. Joe reviews from the 80s through the 90s line. But now he's added on Fridays, he's reviewing the current ones, the Classified series, Classic Fridays. I've been really enjoying that because that's one of the few things I have been collecting. Is G.I. Joe Classified. I just grew up really liking G.I. Joe, so I'm having fun with that. I'm totally okay with the video delay. Well, thanks, Daniel. That means a lot to me. It bothers me on like a personal level that I couldn't quite get it done in time, that I'm still working on it. But, it'll get there. It'll get there. I think it's a good one. I hope that everybody likes it. That would mean a lot to me. We'll see. Get your fur babies Christmas gifts the day after when stuff is on clearance. Yeah, because it's true. Cats don't know Christmas Day versus the day after Christmas. I've learned that is good advice. Cats are like, huh? Oh, thanks. I did get my cat a single present, a single toy. It wasn't too expensive, and it's really for, I guess, Chrissy and I in a way, but he'll like it. We've just got the one pet these days, so we sort of give him a lot of attention and essentially spoil him. But that's okay. You guys will allow it, right? This is the wannabe cosplayer in me, but I would really like a Kamen Rider helmet, specifically of the current show, Kamen Rider Revis? But those go for crazy money. Well, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. Dogs do know, so make sure they can unwrap a gift with the family. Okay. So cats don't know, but my sister says dogs do know. I think she's biased because she's a dog owner. I hope someday I can be a dog owner. I think I'd be a good dog owner now. Someday. My cats prefer trinkets they steal from me rather than real toys, and Amazon boxes to real cat beds. James Stewart asks, watched any of the new episodes of The Witcher yet? No, and I've been asked that a few times. I'll be honest, I still haven't finished season 1, so I'm going to make that a priority because I do want to talk about The Witcher on Comic Tropes. My friends Mark and Beata live in Poland, where The Witcher was created, and Beata was kind enough to translate some of the original comics adaptations that they did over there, which have never been brought over here to America. So I thought that that would make for an interesting episode, translating some of the original Witcher comics from Poland, and sharing that with you. I'm also a cat owner, so I'm not biased. Oh, okay. Okay. Is that how it works? Fair. Oh, this pen is dying. Damn. I gotta switch. Let's try this one. I didn't know the new season was out. Just this past week. Just this past week. The new season of... Nope, that's dead too. Great. Then I'm going to have to use a medium and just be delicate with my line work. Or I could always get out an actual brush and draw like a real person. But that's more work. And you know what they say, the more work, the more I'm a jerk. Did they say that? Somebody probably says that. I don't think there's anything I especially want, like, for Christmas, like, I have to have this or Christmas will be ruined. I think that was more me when I was, like, a kid. And even then, I didn't, now that I think of it, get some of the things that I really wanted as a kid, which honestly wouldn't have been that exciting long term. But I do remember in probably 1983, could have been 84, but I really wanted the Star Wars Ewok Village playset. I'm one of those kids that really liked the Ewoks when they came out. I was young enough that they worked for me, so I've never had anything against Ewoks. And oh, I wanted that Ewok Village. Never got that. You know what? It's okay. I don't think it changed my life one way or the other in any meaningful way. So, but I do remember wanting that one. I do remember wanting that. I can't think of too much else that I wanted that, you know, I didn't get, except like a Nintendo. Kind of always wanted a Nintendo as a kid. But that's okay. You know what? That's what was your first console? Because I will say the first console I ever had growing up was an Atari 2600. But I think, honestly, like, because I was really young when my family had that, and I think my dad might have gotten it more for himself at that point in time, just like more out of curiosity than anything else. But what was your first gaming system? Because after that, I didn't really have a gaming system that I got when it first came out new until the N64. James Stewart, I had that playset. I always wanted the AT-AT. Oh, you know what? I did always ask for the AT-AT. I never got that either. That's okay. Daniel says he's already finished watching Witcher Season 2 and he liked it. All right. All right. The Porgs will never replace the Ewoks. I don't know if they were designed to replace them. The Ewoks were pretty important characters in Return of the Jedi. I liked them. That said, even as a kid, I did not like those Ewok movies. They felt like really low-budget Star Wars. So you were like, there's something missing here. And it's not just that Luke isn't here. It feels like it was made for $20. Yeah, there's 2 Ewok TV movies if you've never seen it. They're not so good. Nothing to write home about. I too had the Atari. Yeah, well, we both did, Gene. We grew up with it. And you loved playing Strawberry Shortcake. I definitely remember that game. I remember the music. It was this game that was just mix and match. I don't think you could even technically lose. You just would, like, if you mixed the right head, body, and feet, you would get that character's song. But if you mix and matched it with, like, different characters, it would just play a third of each song in a row. And so that was cute. That was a good idea for you know, a little kid's game. Oh, by the way, I will also have some bonus content before Christmas on this channel. I spent the day going to a humongous vintage toy store and an Asian market, a huge Japanese manga emporium, and Pike Place Market in one day. So I sort of made a huge vlog going to all those places and highlighting all the stuff. I think it'll be a really fun, relaxing video to watch. So just so you know, that'll be coming out on this channel. That's almost all the way done editing. I just needed to prioritize comic tropes to get that out, and then there will be an extra video here. I am going to release it early, though, for, you know, my patrons, and you know, they're the ones that are making this a viable job, so I have to give content there first for a while, make it exclusive, give them early access. I'm sure everybody understands that, but eventually it'll be up for everybody, and it was a lot of fun to make. I definitely saw some amazing 1980s stuff. When my sister mentioned Strawberry Shortcake, it reminded me of this toy store. It's so big. It's such a big store. It just has everything you can think of from your childhood. NES was my first console. Got it in 1990. My sister still has her stuffed Wicket the Ewok. Let's see. Moltar says, my first video game console was the Nintendo GameCube. I had the GameCube. I'm trying to remember what game I really liked on it. Nothing is quite coming to mind right now, but I like that system. I'm trying to think of what my favorite console is. That's, you know what one I don't know if it's my all-time favorite, but I think is massively underrated and had just a fantastic library. Didn't have perfect controls, but like very, very good for its time. The Sega Dreamcast. I think that system was fantastic. I loved my Sega Dreamcast. I should never have sold that. I've sold most of my old consoles at a certain point, and then like, you know, several generations later, I start thinking, oh well, that would be kind of fun to play, like, you know, a retro game right now. But you know, you can't keep it all easily hooked up at the same place. So yeah, I just sort of unload that stuff at a certain point in time. But yeah, I loved my Sega Dreamcast. You know, Shenmue. I liked Seaman, Crazy Taxi, Marvel vs. Capcom, Soul Calibur. Oh, it was so good. Super Nintendo was really great. I've always heard that the Super Nintendo had a lot of great things on it, and that people really loved that era of the console, but I did not have that. And you know what? I still turned out okay. Not great. I turned out okay. Even without that. So, if my parents ever watch this, just know, was it a mistake not to get me a Super Nintendo? Absolutely. Huge mistake. That money that you saved up to send me to college, yeah, that probably should have been spent on a Super Nintendo. No question. We all agree on that. But, even so, I still turned out okay. So you can relax, Mom and Dad. I will ultimately be okay. And I think that should be a big relief to my parents, and honestly, to all parents out there. So feel free to share this with your parents. If they ever didn't get you something, your kids probably still turned out okay, even though you didn't get them that one thing, that just that one thing that they really wanted for Christmas. Could get an Xbox Series S and easily mod it to run any old system. Oh, interesting. The Crazy Taxi soundtrack, very good. The Dreamcast, yeah. SNES had a lot of RPGs. Interesting. Genesis had sports, side-scrollers, fighters, and shooters. Hoodie Coco says, the first console I ever bought for myself was a Sega Genesis. That's cool. You know, and I say getting it new. My sister and I did eventually get a Nintendo, but it was like literally towards like the last year of its life. So they were like being sold at a discount at places, and people were like moving on to other things. So yeah. When you draw the Spider-Man, what artist do you take inspiration from? Oh, that's interesting. You know what? For Spider-Man specifically, I do tend to draw a lot of inspiration from the angular lines of John Romita Jr. Big fan of John Romita Jr. When he's at his best, I love that guy's art. I love it. And without giving away what I'm talking about for this episode that will be up later tonight, it does occasionally involve some John Romita Jr. Spider-Man art. So I've definitely had Spider-Man on the brain this week. $1995? Maybe. No, 95 I would have been in college, so probably like 94 I think we got a Nintendo. So I had it for like not quite a year before I left for college. Something like that. I've been reading JMS and John Romita Jr.'s Spider-Man run. You know, J. Michael Straczynski is a good writer, and I like some of what he did. I didn't love his Spider-Man run just because it used so much supernatural, mystical stuff, and I was like, this guy should just write Doctor Strange. Put him on Doctor Strange. He just... and I'm not against it, but like the Spider Totem stuff, Ezekiel, Moreland, none of that really resonated too much with me. I did like Spider-Verse, which Dan Slott used Moreland for that. I did like Spider-Verse. But yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of the JMS writing, although John Romita Jr.'s artwork on it I did love. So that's actually what kept me reading it at that point, was I was just like, I mean, it was beautiful. Some of his absolute best work of his career was in that era of Spider-Man. My opinion. I'm allowed to have an opinion. You know what? Before I can ink Miles, he has red webbing, so I need to like draw that in essentially negative, which is just too intimidating to do with ink. I'm gonna have to mark it out with pencil and figure it all out. So at first it'll look like regular Spidey, but eventually it'll become Miles. I like Miles. I like Miles Morales a lot. I think that he wasn't perfect when he first came out. It was a little too much like Peter. But I think as time has gone on, Miles has become a better and a better character. And I think that that's actually true for a lot of characters who are company-owned. I think that, like, you know, because if you read the first issues of Superman, that's not the same Superman as what we got by the 1980s. It took the Spider-Man newspaper strips, the Spider-Man radio serial, Spider-Man, I meant Superman, the Superman TV show, to add certain elements to the mythology and refine it to sort of come up with just the right version. So, like, early Miles Morales is not the most exciting to me. I think he's got a great look, slightly different powers, and an interesting background, and his personality just isn't quite locked in. Over time, you realize, okay, he's more artistic and more engaged in his community and close with his parents in a way that like is very different from Peter Parker. And it just took a while for that to evolve. And I think that certainly the Spider-Verse movie helped, you know. I think that that definitely added a lot to his character. I think that Into the Spider-Verse had a better origin than what Bendis gave him. Yeah, and I think that that's moving forward, you know, writers are going to pull more from that, and that will be the personality of Miles Morales. I'm just saying that I do think that that's common for a lot of these superheroes to sort of be an unbaked cookie for their first, 10 years. And sometimes they still are great. Unbaked cookies can taste great. But to get to the version that's like, perfect and finished can take a little while. That's all. I think that that's very common. Batman was shooting criminals when he first started out, and now that's sort of a defining aspect of Batman, that he will not kill criminals. But that definitely wasn't the case in his first stories. It took a while not too long for that particular thing, but, everything together, it took a while for him to evolve. It took a while for Superman to simply fly. That was thanks to the Fleischer cartoons. It was going to be easier to animate Superman flying than it would be to animate him leaping tall buildings and then coming back down. Better to just send him up into the air and then he's up there, So these things take time. So sometimes people are like, oh, Miles in the comics isn't like that great. And it's like, well, sometimes you got to give these things a little bit of a pass. Like, it takes a little while to evolve and become something cool and original. Just my 2 cents. Gru was like that as well. Yeah, that's true. Gru evolved. And that was just one creator, your creative team. But yeah. I'm a bit biased. I'm not a huge fan of Bendis. I feel like a lot of his comics are ripped off of Astro City. It's all good if you like him. I think Bendis can be pretty good. I think Bendis is at his best writing crime stuff. I think generally he is good at dialogue, but it can start to sound a little same sometimes. There are valid criticisms, and I'm not saying everything he's done is something I've liked. But overall, I think that Bendis is a pretty solid writer. I really do. I liked his run on Daredevil. I did like that. And I'm pretty critical for something like Daredevil, because Daredevil has had a few defining runs. Even if I find out that Frank Miller is a horrible person, I can't stop loving his Daredevil run because and I'm not saying he is, by the way, I'm just saying if I discovered that, I would still be able to separate the art from the artist in that case because I enjoyed it in a vacuum, and I can still hold on to that memory personally. Thoughts on New Warriors? I have not heard about New Warriors. Emmanuel says, I'm a big Hobgoblin collector. I'm looking forward to your Hobgoblin video. I hope you discuss the DeFalco Stern controversy. Give it a few hours. I will have an episode for you in a few hours. Maybe more than a few, but I'm going to finish it before I go to sleep tonight is all I can say. So it'll be up soon. I guess they've recently updated Miles' costume, which they do sometimes in comics. I don't think it's necessarily an improvement, so personally I think it'll go back to being something closer to his original design. I'm not slavishly loyal to any continuity, but I do think he has a really strong costume design. I like the simple black and red. I think it pops. I think it pops really well. I liked some of his crime stuff, but his Legion of Superheroes, all the characters talk the same. A valid criticism. A valid criticism for many writers, though, and artists as well, that they have trouble making characters look different from one another on a monthly basis, that they have trouble making their voices sound different on a monthly basis. It's a bit of a grind creating superheroes on a monthly basis versus, maybe something creator-owned or a graphic novel, something like that, where you've got a little bit more time to think about these things and do some revisions. So if this channel gets 1,000 more hours of views, which will probably just be a couple more of these live streams and a couple more special episodes, I'll be able to monetize this channel. And once I can do that, like, I plan to do a little more vlogging for, like, traveling and, going to conventions, going to other towns and looking at their comic book shops, things like that. Maybe even doing some food type stuff. I'm excited. Don't worry, comic tropes is obviously my priority. I'm just trying to branch out a little and spread my risk, because if I'm going to do YouTube as a career, I just don't want to put all my eggs in one basket and someday, like, the market changes on a channel and, like, I'm just out. Let's see, Nono says, Matt Draper did a good video recently that talks about Frank Miller a little bit. Oh, well, I would be very curious to see that. I've commented before. I really admire Matt Draper. I think he does an exceptional job at editing, for sure. And that's not where I'm stopping. But he does an exceptional job at editing. And I like his commentary generally. But I don't watch a whole lot of his stuff because what if I wanted to cover that same topic? I'd hate to be unduly influenced by some of that. You know what I mean? And that sometimes bums me out. I'd like to watch more of some of these guys that I really admire. But I think that these days there is a really healthy environment on Twitter specifically amongst some of the comic book YouTubers. I definitely chat and joke around very much with guys like Owen Likes Comics, Michaela Laird, Matt Draper, Comic Drake. I really admire those guys and have fun joking around with them on Twitter. I think that and those are just some, like, just to be clear, there's a bunch of other guys that I really respect, guys and gals. But I'm glad, and I think it's because of putting together that at-home Comic-Con 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago. That really helped us appreciate what each other does. You guys know that I've also talked up cartoonist kayfabe from the beginning, and I feel like I get along well with Jim and Ed. I really like what they do. They offer something different. I always love to ask, though, when this stuff comes up, like, what other YouTube stuff are you guys watching, aside from potentially me? Like, what else do you like to watch regularly? It's always good insight into the audience, like what people are engaged with. I come from a marketing background, so I'm used to constantly doing tests and surveys and stuff like that. If I ever got to work on a Spider-Man story at Marvel, I'd want to work on a graphic novel. A monthly book would destroy me health-wise. It's a tricky thing, isn't it? The New Warriors is written as a joke by a writer of the Colbert Report. Most of those characters are made to be a joke. Oh, okay. I haven't heard about it. Ryan George has some great comedy bits. Haven't heard of that one, so thanks. I'll try to remember that. Trying to think of, like, what I've discovered recently on YouTube that I could mention. It's going to take a minute to think about. Boy, I don't know how... Well, no. I was going to say, I don't know how somebody draws Miles Morales on a monthly basis because taking this takes so long. But, of course, on a book like that, you're going to have help from an inker and a colorist. So there's probably some ways that you can cut down on some of the time it takes to produce. Because this is not fast, but it looks cool, so it's worth it. And it's not... It's relaxing in its own way because you can turn off your brain a little bit. The History Guy, Casually Comics, Toy Galaxy, Shadiversity, YouTube Political Discourse, Vintage Game Streams, Disney Plus. Lately I've been watching a lot of Felon Portios. I don't know what that is. Sorry, Hoodie Coco. You'll have to tell me who... And I probably mispronounced the name. Felis Portios? Don't know. I like to watch just a lot of YouTube when I'm not watching comic book stuff. Draw Free, Mark Crilly. I watch electronics, Big Clive, and woodworking. Oh, woodworking sounds like it would be interesting and relaxing. If I am ever the kind of guy that's able to retire, and I don't think I'll be able to personally. I've always thought that I'll be working till the day I die. I just don't think I'm going to be rich. But if I retired, man, I would love to invest in some nice woodworking tools and just spend my time building, chairs and desks and cabinets. Like, I don't know why, but that's always been interesting to me. I only did a small amount of woodworking in, I guess it was junior high. We had not home ec, what was it called? I don't remember, but we had woodworking for half the year and metalworking for the other half, and I really enjoyed both quite a bit. I like working with my hands as long as I know what I'm doing. I don't want to work in a vacuum and make mistakes, but if I've got a plan, or I know enough that I can start to experiment, I really do enjoy that stuff. So if I was ever able to retire, I would probably be making some amazing furniture. A dream that I don't realistically think I'll ever see to completion, but a dream nonetheless. Felon Portius has done a lot of great videos. Okay, Felon does funny reviews of Teenage Mutant Heroes, Turtles TV shows, and bad cartoon movies. Oh, I'd probably enjoy that. I love Ninja Turtles, and I know that there's quite a bit of bad Ninja Turtle stuff out there. I trust me, I know. So, yeah, I'd probably enjoy something like that. I've learned that the review stuff about bad things that I don't enjoy is when people are faking the outrage, or at least they're not good actors about faking the outrage. But reviewing bad stuff, I think Red Letter Media kind of does a lot of it lovingly, or at least doesn't pretend to be so mad that they're angry. But Angry Video Game Nerd, I guess, does generally work as a character, so I don't mind that. I'm trying to think of exactly what I mean. I guess I don't quite like what's it called? I haven't seen it in forever. Everybody will know who I'm talking about because he's been doing this stuff forever. He reviews old movies, but he acts he just yells a lot. He just yells a lot in a high-pitched voice. Who am I thinking of? And I'm not saying anything bad about the person. I'm just saying it doesn't work for me. Oh, he's had a YouTube channel for ages. More than ages. We just called it shop in school. Oh yeah, the woodworking and the metalworking. Yeah, maybe that's all it was called. It was a long time ago now. Hats Off Media is very good. Oh, and another one. I watch a channel called Hats Off Media. They talk about positive aspects of different types of media, good and bad. Sounds like it's got some variety there. That's nice. Cool. Man, you're funny when you roast the bad stuff. Yeah, well, you do have to, like, every once in a while talk about something bad so that you can, like, just sort of see why it's bad. Like, there is value to be gained in critiquing and reviewing stuff that is not good. I definitely believe that. Thank you. No negative self-talk. I'm not trying to be negative about myself, just to be clear. Black Phoenix says, I watch that Felon one. Probably not pronounced Felon, right? I don't know. Casually Comics, Comic Drake, Comic Pop, Pixel Dan, lots of toy videos. Well, be sure you're watching Hooded Cobra Commander 788. I'm serious. It's G.I. Joe, but oh my god, I love that channel. I do watch Toy Galaxy as well. Oh, and Peg Warmers. I've mentioned that. I like Peg Warmers. I think that that's a good show. Pixel Dan I don't really watch, so I just don't have anything to say on that one, unfortunately. And I have seen some toy channels that I'm just like, I am out, because they try to be too much about, like, drama and stuff, and yeah, there's some bad ones, just to be clear. But generally, and I don't watch every video, but generally I actually quite like what Toy Galaxy does. I think that they've got, like, a really good setup where they've got both, like, you know, a director and a host, that they get to do that stuff together. I think that that helps quite a bit. Having a second point of view is so invaluable when you're working in something like this, like YouTubing. You know, doing this live stream. If I had somebody else talking about the news, I would just be riffing on it. I'd just be making jokes. That's what I do. I think in person, I'm a lot funnier than I probably appear on the show. I'm tooting my own horn there. But what can I say? I think it's true. I think, you know, just to be clear, like, you know, before I ever did, you know, YouTube and stuff, like when I was in college, I was doing stand-up comedy and improv. You know, that's why I'm friends with guys like Dr. Ken Jeong. We were good friends in college, and still are, I think. And there's other guys that I did that with that I really, really respect, like Mike, and Chris, and Nathan, a bunch of guys. And sometimes I miss it, but I love just being funny. I just don't want to force it, and when you're doing something in a vacuum, like it's just you as the host, and I have to give the criticism and lay the groundwork, I'm not able to be as funny always, because I don't have anything to bounce off of. I just have to do everything, if that makes sense. Sometimes I wish I could do another sort of a show, like, you know, a vlog or a react to news type show, where I could just do jokes. Who's your favorite stand-up comic? That's a nice question. Who's my favorite stand-up comic? You know, Patton Oswalt is very high because he's been consistent for so long, and I sincerely laugh out loud at his stuff. There are some others that sometimes, like, you know, I've faded away from. But I also like Paul F. Tompkins. I think is a little underrated. David Cross has been amazing in the past. When I say that there's some guys that I've faded away from, like, you know, live, I've seen Dave Chappelle and Louis C.K. And I think in their prime, super funny guys. Not really huge fan of them now. Not saying they can't be funny, just they've both done stuff in their personal lives that, like, make it, like, harder to separate weird opinions from, like, joke opinions. I think you should be able to joke about everything, so I'm not, like, criticizing them for any of their material that they try to do, but sometimes I just fade away from, like, liking a comic, and they just don't make me laugh the way they used to. But Patton Oswalt is way up there, always makes me laugh, always like that guy. Also, while he's had some difficult, like, life stuff, who's the guy that used to write for SNL and now he's, like, doing stand-up and stuff? I need to look on my phone. Who's my, one of my favorite comedians, and because of course I have to think about it, I'm drawing a blank. Let me look at my artists in my phone, and maybe I'll be able to see who I'm talking about. It's not coming to me. Love Gilbert Gottfried. Gilbert Gottfried is surprisingly funny with his stand-up. He plays a weird character all the time, but if you've never heard him tell The Aristocrats, you're missing out. It's filthy. It's absolutely filthy. And within that... Oh, thank you, Chrissy. Chrissy jumped in. John Mulaney. I love John Mulaney. John Mulaney's stand-up always makes me laugh. He seems to be going through some pretty rough life stuff right now, and I feel for him in that regard. He has some addiction issues, but as a stand-up, as a writer, and a performer, I think he's brilliant. I sincerely think he's brilliant in just that regard. So, yeah, that's one of my favorites. Thanks, Chrissy. And that's the main reason why you should have a partner in life, so that they can remind you what you like when you're too dumb to think about it yourself. That's the main reason, just to be clear. There's a few other reasons, but that's the main one. When is Gilbert Gottfried going to be in the MCU? Who would he play? He probably some sort of like annoying robot or something like that. I don't know. Have you ever heard Gilbert Gottfried do his impression of Jerry Seinfeld? He's done it on Howard Stern a few times over the years. It's pretty funny, pretty biting stuff. What's the deal? What's the deal with this? I mean, what's the deal? Jason Little said it first. Thank you, Jason. My apologies for missing that. Let's see. Personally, I think the people should just know how to separate the person from the celebrity so they can enjoy media without dragging personal biases into the entertainment. Sometimes I can, and I think sometimes people can, and I think sometimes you can't. If my favorite comic book artist literally started saying like that he was a Nazi, I'm not going to be able to enjoy that person's work. Like, I just could not go like, well, at least they're a good artist. Like, I can't look at Hitler's paintings and be like, it's got something pretty good going on there. I can't. It's going to be interesting sometimes. I'm not going to avoid it per se, but I'm not going to be able to enjoy it. So there's a level, I don't know what the tipping point always is, but there is for me a tipping point. If they're just like, somebody had an affair and they broke up with their spouse, well, to me, that's their business. I can usually still enjoy somebody's like writing or acting or something like that. It's too bad, but I don't have all the details. So, like some things I'm like, yep, okay, that just happens. Weird, but okay. But, if they do something really horrible, no, I can't separate it. Like, there's certain things that I just can't get past. And that's my own biases to a degree. I'm not saying that it's right. I'm just saying that that's me. And I think most people are like that. Gilbert Gottfried is the greatest mix. He is Pitalik. Oh, that's true. I forgot that he played that. The Superman animated series had some very subversive, funny choices for who they got to play certain characters. They had Ed Asner play Granny Goodness, a supervillain who works for Darkseid. And just that big, gruff voice as like, an old grandma-looking lady, that was pretty funny. That was pretty good. I was amused at that. But also Gilbert Gottfried as a supervillain. Like, that's also pretty funny. So they were clever with who they cast on that show. They would probably have Mxyzptlk in a Suicide Squad movie before a Superman movie. Well, that's probably true. I think that there's some other characters that we'd probably rather see in a Superman movie before Mxyzptlk. You know, I want to see Brainiac. I want to see Metallo. I want to see something like that. I want to see Titano. You know, the kryptonite monkey, the ape. Gorilla. That's what. But I would have taken Mxyzptlk before Doomsday. Doomsday doesn't do too much for me. Maybe that's something I should talk about at some point on the show. Just that sort of 90s period when DC was putting their superheroes through hell. It's kind of a weird period of time. Sorry, just getting lost a little bit in the detail. I'll check out the chat in just a moment to see what else is going on. They used Doomsday too early, for sure. Ed Asner did J. Jonah in the animated series. Yeah, that was good casting too. Ed Asner was great. Superman has a pretty underrated rogues gallery. He has some interesting characters. Parasite is good. It's Jim Shooter, I believe, came up with that one. Few too many that, like, he should probably not have that much trouble with, like, you know, Toyman or something. Some characters like Toyman or Riddler just never feel like they should give the hero that much trouble. I've never quite understood why of Batman's rogues gallery, Riddler became as popular as he did. And I'm not saying Riddler is bad per se. It's just that his whole gimmick is like, hey, Batman, here's a clue on how to find me. Oh, you found me. I feel like he needs a deeper motivation. So sometimes they've done Riddler well. I liked when he sort of tried to reform himself and work for the police in the comics. That was interesting. But generally, I just don't think giving away clues as to how to find yourself is the best way to be a successful criminal. Livewire. Howie Mandel played Mxyzptlk and Lois and Clark. Oh my god, that sounds terrible. Sorry, that was... I did not watch enough Lois and Clark to be aware of that. That does not sound awesome to me. Something tells me he was not like a little imp, that he was just himself. Just walking around sort of being generally annoying. That's just a guess. I love DC animated series, says Steve, especially the Justice League versus Fatal 5. It has Jessica Cruz and it is all about mental health. Can't say I've seen any of that, but cool. Bizarro is the best Superman villain. Bizarro is interesting. Who created Bizarro? I don't remember who created Bizarro off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up. If you told me, I'd be like, okay, yeah, that sounds like something I've heard before. But right now, off the top of my head, can't remember it. Anybody taking any extra time off besides the holidays, like traveling anywhere to see family or friends, or just some time for yourself? I know it's not like the most popular thing to do, travel these days. Just curious. Because if anybody is, I'm going to sort of live vicariously through you, because I miss traveling. I miss it so much. I just want to do different things, you know? Explore different things. Make YouTube content about different things. Eat different things. We'll see. It'll happen. Autobinder? That sounds right. I don't know for sure, but Autobinder sounds right. Let's see. Hoodie Coco says, I demand Bobcat Goldthwait as the MCU Uncle Ben, or I quit watching movies. Yeah, probably a little too late to ask for that kind of casting, but Bobcat Goldthwait is generally pretty awesome. He's made some really good movies as director. But of course, we mostly all love him for his beloved work on Police Academy. There's a movie I'm surprised hasn't been rebooted already, Police Academy, just because it's got like name recognition, and it probably wouldn't be too hard to like make a better version of it. Yeah, Police Academy, not the funniest. It's got a couple good jokes and a couple really bad ones. That seems like a premise that would be, you know what? People probably just don't want to necessarily make cops heroes right now. But it could still be hilarious. Just hire a bunch of, you know, beloved comedians and let them do whatever they want. I mean, how funny was 21 Jump Street? That was a really underrated movie series in my opinion. I wish Jonah Hill had been able to do at least one more. I really liked those movies. I thought that they were hilarious. All right, there we go. Did a little bit of webbing here, and I'm going to yield a kneaded eraser to clean up some underlying pencil work, which you probably can't see, but I can. I'm surprised they haven't made a Goonies reboot yet. Yeah, I wonder if you could. I guess you could reboot Goonies. Goonies, by the way, I really like. Is it like a flawless movie? I guess not, but I really like it. It looks great. They filmed it nearby here in a town called Astoria in Oregon. Chrissy and I have been there and seen the locations. It's a really pretty, unique looking town. Goonies is great. But I say that, and then I've like introduced people to it, and they're like, it's okay. So maybe you needed to see it when you were a kid. You know, I don't know. That may have been an important factor in Goonies. So that makes me think of this. Like, what's a movie you saw as a kid that you really liked that, like, as an adult, you realize not as many people like it? You know, maybe something like, I don't know, a Last Starfighter or something along those lines. But you were like, you know, as a kid, you were like, oh, this is a perfect movie. And then as an adult, you're like, oh, I guess not everybody loves it like I do. Anybody got a suggestion? If they do a Police Academy reboot, it'll probably be edgy and dark. Oh, okay. Black Phoenix clarifies. Siegel, Schuster, Otto Binder, and George Papp created Bizarro. Wow. That's a lot of people involved in the creation of one character, but that's awesome. Bizarro can be both menacing and funny. There's a lot of different ways to do Bizarro. But just the idea of, like, a version of yourself that's not quite right is kind of a disturbing idea. So, yeah, it's cool. Let's see if I've got any answers to my super deep question here. Last Starfighter might be getting a sequel. Okay, Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, Mystery Men, the Jimmy Neutron movie. Gotcha. Okay. A bunch of those I haven't seen. Gotta work tomorrow. Still gotta finish editing the episode for everybody. All of a sudden, just thinking of all the work I've got to do. Oh well. I'll get there. One thing at a time. First, let's finish drawing some of this Spider-Man stuff together. We're going to do it together, folks. I can't do it alone. The Ewoks films, okay. You like that? Yep. Night Court, you like, yeah. I would really like to see a funny movie with Superman and Bizarro fighting a common enemy. Maybe Lex Luthor. May I suggest? Do you have a favorite supervillain? And if so, who and why is that supervillain your favorite? What do they do that's so good? I'd be happy if no movie that I am fond of ever gets rebooted. Well, that's the trick, isn't it? Like, everybody probably likes some movie. Except for Grizzly. The horror movie Grizzly from like the 70s. I don't think anybody likes that one. It's the only one. Where are my grays? I need some very light grays, please. Where did I put them, though? That is always the question when I'm working. I know I have some really nice ones. All right, let's see what's being asked also. Kevin Costner Robin Hood movie. I love that movie. The Crow. Yep, that was good. As High School Musical once said, we're all in this together. Did they say that? I've never seen any of those. Most of the Spider-Man goblins. Joker. Carnage. Okay. People like the crazy villains, I guess. Crazy. These guys are nuts. These guys are crazy. Venom. Wow. A lot of the same guys showing up. Just doing some things with shading here, and then I'll be right back into the chat room with everybody. All right, let's see. Galactus is my favorite because he's not necessarily evil. He needs to eat to live, but he has to eat sentient beings. Well, he doesn't have to eat sentient beings. He just has to eat worlds that still have energy. So is killing him just as evil as he is because he's not doing it maliciously? That's fair. Yeah. Dr. Doom. Yeah, I think Dr. Doom is interesting. He has a little bit of nobility to him. He just also has an ego. But who among us doesn't have an ego? Right? Made a funny squeak sound. The sense of pride is what I love about Doom. It does keep him interesting. Yeah. Very cool villain. Now got Miles Morales kind of fleshed out there. That was fun. This Spidey still needs some work. I'm a simple man. I just want them to release the Star Wars Christmas special in 4K because if we had to see it, then all the new generation got to see it too. Oh, Gene, interesting. Magneto. Magneto is somebody that's like arguably now a hero. And I bet someday he'll be a villain again. But, you know, these days he's generally portrayed as somebody who's sort of seen the light and is extreme, but not necessarily evil. Which is a cool take. Magneto evolved because, you know, he wasn't always written to be a Holocaust survivor. So, that's something that really like sort of changed, I think, our sympathies for him. You know, he used to just be wanting to be a world conqueror. He started pretty simple, but he evolved. I know they won't, but when the MCU Fantastic Four movie comes out, I hope they just bring the 2005 movie suits out of the closet and use those. They look perfect to me, and the original Reeves actor. Well, it's good that you like those. I think that they'll probably use the classic, like, blue and white uniforms. Yeah. If I had to put money on it, I bet that they would. So they'll probably be similar. What else we got? I really enjoyed House of X Powers of 10, but I'm a little overwhelmed by all of the other X books. Which ones are worth reading? I'd say literally you can skip everything except I've heard lots of good things about Marauders, and then just jump into Inferno. Skip everything else. Unless you hear somebody else specifically recommend it for a reason that you trust. I think you can skip everything else. Sometimes you just got to be ruthless with what you cut, because otherwise you'll just keep buying stuff that, you know, you're not enjoying, and it's not worth supporting stuff that isn't good. I wish I liked everything in a way. There was a time when I basically did. When I was a younger teenager, I wasn't as critical, and I could enjoy almost any comic book. I used to get, for a little while, like just about everything that Marvel and DC produced. It's just too much. It was crazy. But it also gave me a weirdly encyclopedic knowledge about like 80s through 90s comic books. That kind of stuff I just know. That era I know very well. Don't need to, but I do. So what else could I do other than this show, right? Can't think of another way that would be useful. Well, I guess being a writer, but yeah. Why are they recycling titles? It's confusing. Yeah. Hi, Chris. Here's a Watchmen theory. Okay. I bought and read the Kraven's Last Hunt comic after watching your video about it, and I think it might be one of my favorite Spider-Man stories now. Thank you for that. It's like my favorite. It's so cool. It's just so good. Yeah. Sometimes there doesn't have to be like a massive mega arc for a writer to have produced your personal favorite Spider-Man story. And that's kind of cool. Okay, so Darius says, Ozymandias killed the comedian to bring people to uncover his involvement in plot. He hoped the people investigating the murder would find him and that he would be able to monologue to them. I don't know that that was his goal. I suspect that if people, like, if the superheroes did stop him, in a way he would be satisfied with that, because that would be sort of uniting the world and improving the world by, like, you know, improving the heroes that it has to look out for it. So in a way I bet he wouldn't have been too upset, but I don't think that was his goal, if that makes sense. Spider-Man 5 should be about Kraven. I would love a riff on the Kraven's Last Hunt for a movie. It's a little dark. You probably couldn't take Spider-Man out for too long before the audience, like, almost sort of turns on it for a movie. But maybe just for, like, you know, a big chunk of one of the acts, like, you know, Spider-Man seems to be gone and his friends sort of get some subplots built up. We care about them for a while. I don't know. Kraven's Last Hunt, I feel, is just such a good story. I do think it could provide the framework of a good movie. I think that the next thing that they might do, and this is based on absolutely nothing, just for the record, but if they did another Spider-Man movie in the MCU, I feel like they might use J. Jonah Jameson and have him build Scorpion. I feel like that would sort of be an easy one where you don't have to necessarily do too much with setting a lot of characters up. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think that the best decision for the next one would be to try to go bigger and give us, like, you know, the Sinister Six or something. I don't think that would be a great idea. I would rather see something like Scorpion, Kraven, characters along those lines. Having Kraven replacing Spidey will be hard unless they tie in the Venom symbiote changing his appearance. I mean, he's in a costume though, so I think it'd work. Anyway, love your drawings. I think you are really good. Well, just trying to be better more than anything else, you know. And it's just something fun to do while chatting with all of you, talking about the news of the week, comics, opinions. Certainly appreciate everybody sharing their opinions. Never want to just shoot those down. You never know. Maybe someday one of you guys will be the next big thing in comics, and I don't want to have burned any bridges by being a total jerk host. I was just about to clear my throat, and I could just sort of feel that it was going to come out as sort of a sigh, Made me remember, don't hear about him too much these days, and for good reason, but Chris Chan. Just a weird internet character if you've never read about him. And if you haven't, you probably don't need to, actually, because it's not the happiest story on the internet. Yeah. You hope you do become a pro, man. You have a lot of interesting ideas to turn into comics. Well, just remember, guys, try to start with your own projects as compared to trying to break in at a place like Marvel or something. Those guys will come find you and offer you plenty of money if you can prove to them that you can tell your own stories and get something accomplished on your own. And you'll probably make more money on what you accomplish on your own, too, just for the record. Chris, you're a great host. Keep up the good work. I did not make that up, for the record. That's actually what somebody typed in the chat. Thank you for the compliment, Terry. That's very nice of you. If they make another Spider-Man movie, with the amount of money this made, they'll make another one, just for the record. Could they do it without rehashing, remixing the whole origin story? Could they do that? They're not going to do the origin. They're well past that. They're well past that. They're not going to do that. They're just not. Yeah. Ultimately, the Spider-Man in the movies is a very different Spider-Man than the comics in a lot of ways. I think, personality-wise, he's the same. Powers-wise, looks-wise, he's the same. But in terms of, what this character's gone through, it's actually quite different. And that's okay, because, we've got the Spider-Verse. That's a thing that's been established in the comics and the movies. Into the Spider-Verse a couple years ago established that there's just different Spider-Mans. So I don't really mind that some of these movies are now diverging a bit from being a literal adaptation of what I already know. I don't really mind that, personally. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I don't mind it so much. I used to mind that stuff a lot when there were only a few comic book movies. When there'd only be a Batman movie, I was like, the Joker didn't kill Batman's parents. This movie stinks. And it's not as important now if they get the broad strokes correct and tell an interesting story, because I feel like it all exists. It just depends on what continuity is your favorite. I don't know. In the next movie, Spider-Man should turn off the dark. I sincerely think that they should, in the next Spider-Verse movie or two, they should have a musical Spider-Man that just goes around singing. I think that would be awesome and hilarious. I saw the Spider-Man musical, by the way, and guess what? I don't think it was that bad. I really don't. It got it got so much bad publicity, and that's because they spent too much. It wasn't well run behind the scenes. They were wasting money in terms of how stuff was accomplished. They took too long doing previews. There were injuries that should never have happened. But once all was said and done, it was pretty entertaining with some good music. I sincerely don't think it was too bad of a musical at all. I wish more people had an opportunity to see it, because Chrissy and I saw it, and we had a good time at it. Like, we were not expecting to, and we did. We were like, okay, that actually was kind of cool. The wire work of, like, Spider-Man and Green Goblin flying over our heads was pretty amazing also. It was really cool. So I think if the next Spider-Verse movie had Japanese TV Spider-Man and singing Spider-Man, that would be really, really cool. They're not going to do that, but that's okay. I would like it. A Bollywood musical comedy Spider-Man movie. Sure, I'll go for it. The Lizard and Kraven costumes were horrendous. For Turn Off the Dark, yeah, some of the costumes were bad, I will admit that. I think they had Hammerhead, who looked ridiculous, and they had Swarm, and like an original character or two. So yes, don't get me wrong, it was not perfect, but that stuff was less important because it was kind of just about the story and the music, and that stuff was good. The sets were incredible, the stunts were incredible, the singing was really, really strong, and the songs, a lot of them were really catchy. Anyway, just my opinion, but that's actually one thing I wouldn't really trash. I'm not going to say that it's like an all-time great musical, but it was not as bad as I think its reputation might lead you to believe. I had a good time at it. And I didn't expect to, because I'm a little bit of a Spider-Man purist. But I did have a good time. For what it's worth. Maybe I'll do an episode on that someday. The history of the Spider-Man musical. Putting together the clips would be tough, but could be an interesting story. I would not be trashing it. I would talk about like the problems and how it got its bad reputation. But I don't think it itself. The people involved is like the actors and stuff kind of deserved better. Someone earlier was talking about like this stuff they got for Christmas, and somebody mentioned that they got wanted an AT-AT. I'll just say, as an adult, there is now this massive Lego AT-AT set. That's what I would love. I'm total nerd for it, but yeah. Terry asks, and this is something I talked about towards the top of the show, what do I think about Punisher's new logo? It's not bad. I'm sure that someday the original will come back, to be honest. But yeah, it's not bad at all. Go for it. Take Punisher in a new direction. Doesn't always pay off. I think Angel Punisher was pretty bad, but I think there are plenty of times where it does pay off. I think that Frankencastle was fantastic. I loved that story arc. I thought that was really, really well done. There is an excellent nearly 2-hour documentary on Turn Off the Dark from channel Wait in the Wings. I won't watch that just in case I ever do my episode. That's too bad, though, because 2 hours. How could I compete with that? Darn it. Get Cirque du Soleil to do the wire work. Well, they probably should have. Cirque du Soleil. This Cirque is a jerk. That's my tagline for it. A real circle jerk, say reviewers. I might actually finish this little drawing. There's not a whole lot left to do. I don't know if I'll color all of Peter Parker's Spider-Man tonight, but I think I can at least finish what I'm inking, and we'll at least have a complete piece of artwork tonight, which we don't get every night that I do this. So that's kind of cool. I was wondering what your favorite Star Wars villain was. I loved Maul in the shows and just bought the new Crimson Reign comic and loved it. I think mainly because of, my age, and when I grew up with Star Wars, it'll have to be Darth Vader. He's a pretty complex villain, ultimately, and it was interesting tracking his story. So yeah, I think I'd still go with Darth Vader overall. But I will say that, like, these days, in terms of Star Wars stuff that I'm enjoying, man, The Mandalorian is good. Can't wait for that show to come back. I'll have fun with Boba Fett, but I'm excited about the return of the Mando at some point. He's just so good. I finished the 3rd issue of my Spider-Man Web of Shadows fan comic and used screen tone instead of color. It was fun to work with. Well, that's cool. Just be sure to spend some of your creative energy creating something original that you can monetize. But that's great. Working with that stuff can definitely, creating a fan comic can teach you plenty. And I love working with screen tone. It's time consuming, but boy is the result beautiful. And it's kind of relaxing in its own way to do. I just noticed I was like almost holding my breath, like when you shoot a gun or something. I was just drawing carefully. Hello, Sean Alley. Thank you for jumping in. Brandon says, I really don't understand the vitriol about his logo being co-opted by a group people don't agree with it. Like, just co-opt it back. Use it how Marvel wants it and make it clear what it stands for. I mean, it stands for a villain. I think that Marvel needs to treat Punisher a little bit more like a villain. He was created to be a villain. He can sort of work a little bit as an anti-hero, but in a way he's more of an anti-villain. Like he is a villain that just goes after slightly worse people. Yeah. He's an interesting but deeply flawed character. Deeply flawed man. Let's give Spidey some red. Oh man, Spider-Man sure pops with his colors. Isn't his costume one of the best in superheroes? Skin tight, but what a great pattern. What a great design. Just iconic. And a little bit creepy. Just a little bit. But that's good. Makes him stand out. Wishing everyone a wonderful Christmas. That's nice. Any fun Christmas plans? Mine's going to be fairly modest. No travel this year. Really, Chrissy and I are going to go up and see her parents for Christmas Day. And I believe that they are going to cook a dinner for us. I don't know if I have to bring anything yet or not. I should ask tonight. So just the 4 of us, and that'll be nice. We'll have a good time. Nothing special, though. Like, you know, we're not going out or playing any special reindeer games or anything weird. We'll figure something out to do for the day. You know what I haven't had time to do, and I don't know if I will, honestly. I do like to watch at least one Christmas special, like, you know, Grinch or Charlie Brown or something a year, but this year I just haven't had any time to do something like that. My personal favorite Christmas special is the Rankin and Bass Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I love that one. That's my personal favorite. I love a lot of them, but yeah, that's my favorite. Do you guys have a favorite Christmas special? Or maybe you don't celebrate Christmas, in which case do you have another special that you like? Just finished my laundry. Wow. Guys, let's pause for just a few minutes and give Steve Sorensen a round of applause. Clean laundry. You can't beat that. This guy, he ain't gonna stink. Well done, Steve. We're all proud of you. I definitely wanted to take some time off from talking about comics to acknowledge your great success. And now I will go back to the chat, but rest assured, nothing's topping that tonight. You have to cook the turducken and make a fudge tower. Oh, okay. Tell you what. I'm going to Mexico. See ya. Let's see. Hey, Chris. Sorry if you answered this already, but what is your definitive Spider-Man run that you think everyone should read? Well, I think I've said before that my favorite Spider-Man story is Kraven's Last Hunt. I don't know if you can get a definitive run that tells you everything about Spider-Man. Because, for instance, he's not a huge quipster in that one. It's a pretty serious story. But I think it does talk about him as a hero and what Spider-Man, not even Peter Parker specifically, but what Spider-Man needs to be as a hero. And, yeah, so that's my favorite. As far as a writer goes, or a writer-artist combo, one of the ones I saw early on was David Michelinie and Todd McFarlane, and I loved that. I also loved Roger Stern and John Romita Jr. And I also really admired a lot of what Dan Slott did, which I guess some people loved and some people don't love as much, but I liked the Superior Spider-Man storyline quite a bit, and I liked Into the Edge of Spider-Verse and Spider-Verse. I liked those a lot. So those are some of my my tops. And then you really can't go wrong, though, just to be clear, you can't go wrong with Stan Lee, Steve Ditko. Or even Stan Lee, John Romita Sr. Here's why Spider-Man's a top-tier character. I could keep going, I could keep going with a lot of great writers and artists that have worked on it and defined what Spider-Man is. It's very difficult to just pin it on one. But for me, Kraven's Last Hunt is my favorite story. Gotta go. All right, see ya, James. Are those alcohol-based markers? They are. How do you prevent the inks from smearing? They dry on the paper pretty quickly. Like, see? I'm like rubbing my finger on it. It's not going to smear. Also, you have to get a good paper for it. Most people like Bristol, which works very, very well. I prefer Paris paper. I just think it's nice and smooth, but doesn't tend to streak. I just really like how it accepts inks and colors and stuff like that. And pencils. So yeah, I like Paris paper quite a bit. So I'd say that, it's not necessarily any one tool. You have to more just, think of how the tools are going to work in concert with each other. if that makes sense. I hope I am making sense, because otherwise, I'd be a crappy host. Did you ever read Marvel Knights Spider-Man Reign? Yeah, I think so. Is that the one where Mary Jane dies because Spider-Man's blood was radioactive, and it's like him in the future is like a curmudgeonly, depressed Spider-Man? I wasn't a huge fan of that, if it's what I'm thinking of, but I think that that's Spider-Man Reign. Felt like it was being grimdark for the purpose of being grimdark. Watery smooth paper is always the best feeling. The best. One of my favorite Christmas movies was Donovan's Reef. It was Christmas in a tropical climate. Never saw snow as a kid. Never heard of that one. I wanted to hate Superior Spider-Man, but I loved it. It's so good. So good. Yeah. Not his blood. I don't know what that refers to. Sorry. I'm going to put in this red. I'll put in a little bit of blue, and then I'll probably just use some grays to touch up a few last-minute details on this guy. But for a doodly sketch while I'm talking, I don't think this one came out too bad. I think that I had some fun with it, and overall I'm fairly pleased with the result. At some point in the future, I may start doing, like, the drawing might, not right now, I have no plans, but it might become commission-based. Like, if people wanted to buy a piece of artwork, I just try to draw what they like, or at least work on some of it while I do the show. I may take some commissions in the future. Not right now, I'm too busy right now, but maybe in the future. We'll see. Because I've had more than one inquiry about, like, if I would draw a on a blank comic cover, and I was like, maybe if I had time. If I could have time in a bottle, right? Like that. Let's keep it PG. Superior Spider-Man was a fun read. Good. Something else was radioactive, but yes, let's go with blood. Right. Yeah, that's too dark. That's too dark. Spider-Man Reign, not my favorite. The artwork was pretty good, as I recall. The artwork was definitely pretty good. Who's everybody's favorite Spider-Man artist? Just artist, overall. If you have one, shout it out. And if you don't, that's okay too. Just to be clear. And I'll look up and see those answers in just a sec. Let's see. Humberto Ramos. Okay. Respect. I'm trying to think of who my overall favorite is, and I think, personally, it's John Romita Jr. for me. I love the art of Paulo Rivera, Mark Bagley, Ryan Stegman. All right. Yeah, that's the thing. There's so many different interpretations to Spider-Man, and it's really cool. None of these are wrong. I shared mine. A bunch of you sharing yours. I really appreciate you sharing. McFarlane. Ross Andrew. Underrated. Ross Andrew's really good draftsman. I think he did a really good Spider-Man. Mark Bagley. Yep. Not surprised to see him up there. He's definitely the one with the most people have probably seen Mark Bagley, believe it or not, because when he was working on the title, that's when it had its highest circulation. And he's done such a long run on whatchamacallit, Ultimate, and then he's come back for special issues on Spider-Man a bunch. So I think he's probably the one who's drawn Spider-Man the most by far, honestly. Eric Larson. Nice. John Romita finalized the look for Spider-Man in my opinion, and his pencils are always a beauty to look at. How about an episode on Image Comics, like the whole history and whatnot? That would be fun. I would definitely consider it. The only thing is, I will say that there's a great documentary that I think the Sci-Fi Channel produced on the history of Spider-Man. I'm drawing Spider-Man on Image Comics, including interviews with the founders. So it's how could I compete with that? You know, they got to interview straight from the source. So never say never. I would have a good time doing that. I just don't know if I could make something. You know, if there's been a documentary about a creator, there's a Bill Finger documentary on Hulu, I believe. That makes it very hard to say, well, I could come up with something that's going to give you as much information or compete on, a technical level like that. That's just not going to really happen. So, we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully that logic makes sense. It would be a lot of fun to analyze and write. I just don't know if I could make it as interesting as a documentary that has a full crew. What else is being asked? Your greatest asset is your analysis and condense an issue. Yeah, I do try to make it digestible, but sometimes that can also be used as a criticism against me. Hey, you forgot this, you forgot that. And it's well, I didn't forget. I made a conscious decision not to cover a certain aspect. But people don't always get that. There. It's not too bad of a Spidey man. right? A little bit of definition. Not too much. There. I like it. Personally. I like it. Yeah, Sci-Fi did a documentary on Image Comics called The History of Image Comics. It's hard to compete with something like that. That was really well done, and they got to talk to the actual creators. So, you know, I'd just sort of be showing pictures from the comics while narrating it. And that can be interesting. It's just that also, like, people that are specifically interested in that topic, most of them have probably already seen that documentary. So, like, generally I try to look for things that I'm either super passionate about on a personal level, so I feel like I've got something to add opinion-wise, or it's at least something that hasn't been covered too much already. Try to look for, like, comics or runs that haven't been analyzed to death, so that there's at least maybe still an audience to discover it. Thank you, Moritaka. I actually was specifically thinking about the Sam Raimi Spider-Man when I came up with, like, the posing and everything. That is not, like, traced from a still or anything, but it's absolutely meant to evoke, I don't know, I can't remember whether it's, like, the first, second, or third movie, but, like, a shot where he, like, is hanging on the side of the building. So it's definitely meant to evoke that. Amazon also had another doc up for a while. Yeah. I would watch your take for the cold open alone. Yes, I could at least come up with a ridiculous opening. Trying to think if there's anything I'm forgetting. But, yeah, I think that's basically going to be it for me tonight. Yeah. I had a really good time, excuse me, drawing this one. I had a blast. I'm going to just do a little something here to make Miles's spider emblem pop a little bit more. I'm using a very bright red, even though I've sort of given this some shadow. I'm going to give it just a little bit of bright red on top of that just to bring it out just a tiny bit more than the webbing. I think that did. It's probably hard to see on the screen. I'll take a picture of this and post it to Twitter and the Comic Tropes Twitter, the Comic Tropes Instagram. So I'll do that. Are you going to cover Jingle Bell, Santa's Daughter by Paul Dini next year? Not necessarily. Who knows, though? Who knows? I always appreciated your videos highlighting lesser-known creators. I really appreciated your episode on Lily Renee. I'd never heard of her. Isn't she interesting? You know, had a role to play in World War II. Anyway, this has gone for a little over 2 hours, so I think it's a good time for me to take a break, because what I want to do, I'm going to go upstairs and have like some sort of a simple dinner while I finish editing the next Comic Tropes. That should be up at some point in the next few hours. It's going to take me a couple more hours to edit, then I have to upload it and it renders. So it'll probably be kind of like late tonight, but by tomorrow morning, you'll have a Comic Tropes episode. If you don't have time, tomorrow, hopefully over the holidays, people have time to sit down and watch it. I think it's going to be a really fascinating one to a lot of people. I really do. I think it's a great topic that I've been holding on to for a long time. And with Spider-Man out this week, excuse me, my topic just bored me. No, I think a lot of people will like it. Thank you all for the questions tonight. Means a lot. Thank you all for the comments. And I'm going to take off now until I see you next time. Keep reading comics. And now I'm going to give it a few seconds because my sister tells me that when I end the stream, it seems to cut it off a little early. So now I've said everything I plan to say. I'm going to give it some time to breathe, and then I'll end the chat. Thanks, everyone.